We're going to talk about a really tough story today. We're looking at the tragic events that unfolded on September 28th, 2025, in the small community of Grand Blanc Township, Michigan. We're going to break down what happened, who was behind it, and maybe most importantly, the incredible and surprising way the community responded.
So, just picture it. It's a normal Sunday morning. Families are gathered for church services at the local meeting house of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's a scene of peace, of community, something that happens in thousands of towns just like it, every single week.
But that quiet, that peace, was about to be absolutely shattered. In just a few minutes, this ordinary morning would spiral into chaos, violence, and just unbelievable tragedy, leaving the community, and really the whole country, in shock. Okay, so here are the hard facts. The location is Grand Blanc Township, Michigan. And this wasn't just a shooting, it was a complex three-pronged assault involving a vehicle ramming, an assault rifle, and arson. The final toll was just devastating. 5 people were killed, and that includes the attacker, and another 8 people were injured. All right, let's dive into the attack itself. I mean, how did something this horrific unfold so quickly?
The speed of this whole thing is just staggering. Look at this timeline. The first 911 call comes in at 10:25 and 32 seconds. Just 16 seconds later, police are dispatched. The first officer is there in under 2 minutes. By 10:28, a second officer is on scene and the attacker is neutralized. The entire police response, from dispatch to the end of the threat, took less than 4 minutes. It's incredible.
Inside the church, it was absolute chaos. The attack started when the perpetrator literally rammed his pickup truck straight through the front doors of the building. Then he gets out with an assault rifle and just starts shooting into the congregation. And if that wasn't enough, he then set the building on fire. So you have people trapped between gunfire and flames. Just unthinkable.
So, of course, that leads to the big question. Who would do something like this, and why? Let's try to understand the attacker himself, Thomas Jacob Sanford. The person behind all this was identified as Thomas Jacob Sanford. He was a 40-year-old local guy, a U.S. Marine veteran who had served in the Iraq War. And pretty quickly, investigators and his friends pointed to this long-standing, really intense hatred he had for the LDS Church.
Looking back at his life, you can see some significant moments. He joined the Marines right after high school and did a tour in Fallujah, Iraq. Then, later on, he was dealing with some immense personal struggles, caring for his young son who had to go through multiple surgeries for a rare genetic disorder, which put him under huge financial stress.
According to the people who knew him best, the motive wasn't really political. It was deeply personal. It all seemed to come from this grudge he'd been holding on to for over a decade, a fixation on the church and its members. And this quote from his best friend, a guy who knew him since preschool, it's just chilling. It shows you how all-consuming this hatred had become. This wasn't just a simple disagreement with a religion. It had morphed into this dark obsession where he saw church members as some kind of existential threat. And on top of this grudge, there were other really serious issues going on. Friends said this all started after a bad breakup with a woman who was a member of the church more than 10 years ago. They also pointed to heavy methamphetamine use, which they said really changed him, along with that immense financial pressure from his son's medical care. But as awful and as dark as all of this is, out of that chaos came these incredible stories of bravery. So now let's talk about the heroes of that day. First, let's go back to this number. 3 minutes and 47 seconds. That's how long it took from the moment police were dispatched to the moment they stopped the threat. An unbelievably fast response by a Grand Blanc Township officer and a Department of Natural Resources officer that, without a doubt, saved lives. And then you have the heroism inside the church. 2 members of the congregation, who happened to be emergency medicine residents, they managed to get out. But they didn't run away from the danger. No. They ran back into the burning building with an active shooter inside, again and again, dragging wounded people out to safety. Their medical chief called them absolute heroes, and he's right. And the bravery just kept coming. There were nurses on strike at a hospital nearby. They heard the shots, left their picket line, and ran towards the danger to help the victims. Police body cam footage even showed a church member, a man in a suit, running toward the attacker with his own handgun, trying to stop him. Just incredible courage from everyday people. So now, let's pull the camera back a bit to the aftermath, because what happened next is, for a lot of people, the most remarkable part of this entire story. We're talking about the community's response. This part is
Well, it's almost hard to wrap your head around. A young woman was kneeling over her father, who had just been shot and was dying. She sees the attacker walking toward her. And in that exact moment, she wrote later, she looked him in the eyes and she forgave him. Not out loud, she said, but with my heart. An act of grace in the middle of an absolute nightmare. And that spirit of forgiveness, it didn't just stay an idea. It turned into action. Of course, fundraisers were immediately set up for the victims' families. But then something else happened. An LDS author started a fundraiser for the attacker's family, for his widow and children who were also victims in this whole tragedy. And that fundraised over $300,000. And what's really amazing is who was donating. Yeah, about half the donations came from members of the LDS Church, but the other half, that came from people of other faiths, and even from people who identified as non-believers. The organizer put it perfectly. This wasn't just about one faith, he said. It was a human story of compassion for an innocent family caught in the crossfire. To help understand this, a religious scholar offered this perspective on the ideal of forgiveness in their faith. It's like holding a burning hot coal, intending to throw it at someone. In the end, it just hurts you more than it hurts them. Forgiveness, in this view, isn't about excusing the act. It's about letting go of that burning coal so it doesn't consume you too. So in the end, the story of the Grand Blanc attack is one of terrible, terrible violence and loss. But somehow it's also a story of incredible bravery and a profound, challenging act of community grace. And it leaves us with this question that just hangs in the air long after the headlines are gone. In the face of the unthinkable, what does it truly mean to forgive?